Okay. The silver screws are of the long nature, same as the long ones, and the short one is the short one. This is the printed circuit board for the Super Nintendo. You'll see that it's pretty much a complete unit. There's only a couple things that you can replace at this point, unless you're geared up to do surface mount technology. You can replace the reset button here. If you flip it over, you'll note that there are 4 solder joints right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Desoldering those, and you can gently rock the switch back and forth, and then it will lift out, and you can replace those. Again, over here is the 7805 5-volt regulator, which can be replaced, and the 1.5 amp fuse. Okay. Under here you have a 1,000 microfarad 25 volt filtering capacitor. And then back here you have the RF modulator and the output ports. Okay? Now you can break this down further by removing these 2 screws and the 2 screws over here, and then the retaining screw for the 7805. The 7805 will run warm, and that's why it's bolted to this large heat sink. So if you're gonna remove this and do any testing at all, be careful, because you don't want to remove the heat sink and replace the 7805 and then run the 7805 without some kind of heat sink to pull the heat away from it. Okay? What I would recommend that you do at this point, if this is bad, you can remove this heat sink if you want. Okay, to break this down further, for shipping, you may want to remove these 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath, and then the 5th one holding the 5-volt regulator. This is the only screw that needs to be removed in order to replace the 5-volt regulator. Simply unscrew that screw, turn this over, and desolder the 3 leads. One is marked I for input, G for ground, and O for output. It's a standard 1 amp 7805 5-volt regulator. Okay. We can unsolder those 3 leads and remove the 5-volt regulator. Also, right next to the 5-volt regulator is a 1.5 amp fuse. Most of you know how to test fuses, but just for those that don't, get a voltmeter, and I've put mine on continuity check so that whenever the 2 leads are touched, it gives an audible sound, and you can then test fuses. Okay? So now that we've removed the securing nut from the 5-volt regulator, if you remove the bottom 4 then the heat sink can be moved, and that exposes the RF modulator and your filter transformer. At this point, basically all that we can do is board swap. Not many of you are set up to do surface mount technology removal and replacement, and these chips are very difficult to get. So at this point, what I would recommend that you do is get a static protection bag, insert the circuit board into the static bag, secure it with a piece of tape, and then you can mail it to us for replacement. To be honest with you, even the authorized repair centers that are out there, the 300 or so authorized repair centers, this is all that Nintendo will allow them to do, is to do board swap. They may not even let them get this far into it. They have to send this board back for replacement. So to check with us on current pricing, we're competitive so that you can still charge a fair price and still make enough money to make it worth your while on a repair should the board go bad. Okay? Send that off to us. I want to mention a couple things. You'll notice that in the bottom of this there is an RF shield, a bottom RF shield, which is quite large. And then even below that there are two U-brackets that fit in the bottom cover. And the reason that Nintendo put these U-brackets in is so that you can secure that at a desk. You can place this on a desk or a flat surface somewhere and drill access holes up through the bottom, and then you can screw it down to the desk so that it cannot be removed or stolen. And it's good for demo purposes, or if you, for one reason or another, if you have a unit that you want to put on a bench for test purposes, then you may want to look into securing that so that it can't be removed or stolen. But the reason I mention that is if the unit comes in very dirty, you may want to wash this off also. And when you turn that over to wash it off, those will fall out and you may not know where those go, but that's where they go. This can be immersed in water, warm water, along with the top portion to be cleaned. It's a nice little extra that you can do for the customer. What I like to do is get a bucket and fill it full of warm water and put in some mild dishwashing soap, the liquid soap, and then use a brush to scrub the top of this and to remove any dirt or marks there might be on the side and the top. Let it thoroughly dry out and then return it to the customer. Same with the bottom. And be sure to replace these U brackets. They go with the U pointed up, obviously. And then you can put the bottom RF shield on, and then you can reassemble. So at this point what I'm going to do is we're going to pause the cameras, we're going to put it in time-lapse photography, and I will do the reassembly in time-lapse photography, and then we'll come. Okay, now that I've got it reassembled to this point, a couple questions that come up that I want to mention. The ribbon cable that goes from the front controller jack LED assembly onto the motherboard of the Super Nintendo does not go under the RF shield. It goes above it. Some of you have tried to route it underneath there and it gets cut. Watch out, and it goes above it, as in this case. Okay? The other thing that's kind of tricky is reassembling the eject mechanism. So I'm going to kind of hold this, if I can, I'm going to try to kind of put this at an angle and show you. For me, what works the best, again, is the longer the arm goes down on the bottom and the taller goes up to the top. What I usually do is I like to insert the bottom arm in first, and then put the eject mechanism in place, put the other arm in place, and then you can kind of lift up this one end over here, insert the rod all the way through. It'll come out the other side. It's kind of tricky. Into place, and then this just slides back in, and then the lever lays down. And now it's ready to go back together again. Okay? I'm going to lay that aside. I'm going to set that to the side, and there's one thing that I'd like to mention at this point. The thing that's interesting is this is what's called the Nintendo Super Famicom, and it is the Japanese version of the Super Nintendo. It was released almost 2 years prior to the release of the Super Nintendo in the United States. You'll notice that it looks, when compared to the Super Nintendo, there's some very similar type features. Some very similar features. The slots are in the same location. The power is in the same location. Eject button similar, and the reset button is similar. They've moved the power light over to here, where it's down here. Frankly, the people that I've spoken with prefer the appearance of this over the appearance of this unit. As far as the front, again, the jacks, player 1 is on the left, player 2 is on the right, similar to the United States version. The controllers are interchangeable. You can use the controllers on either unit, and they're interchangeable. And once you get down into the guts of the machine, the on-off switch and the printed circuit board and everything are identical. Another common request that I get is, can we play the Super Famicom cartridges in the Super Nintendo? Well, what Nintendo did is if you look at the design of the Super Famicom, they're almost shaped like a D, whereas the American version is a rectangular shape. The openings are identical, and like I said, when you get down inside the machines, they're the same. If you take the circuit board out of this machine, or out of this cartridge, and place in an American cartridge, it will play in either machine. The software will play in either machine. Unfortunately, Nintendo designed the cartridges so that they're not interchangeable. The American cartridge is too wide to fit in the Japanese version, and the Japanese version, although it will fit down in, what Nintendo did was he designed two little grooves right here, and to match that, if you look in the top, and I'm not sure if you can see this real well, but in the top there are two grooves right here, a groove here, actually a ridge here and a ridge here, which mate with these two grooves when it's inserted, and allows it to go all the way in. Can you see that here? Alright, so you can see how the groove and the ridge mate and allow the connector to go all the way in. The game cartridge and the connector. Unfortunately, when you try to insert a Japanese version in, it doesn't have the grooves here, and it hits on these ridges and it's not able to be inserted all the way. So the way that you get around this, to modify this, is you simply remove these two ridges inside the American version of the Super Nintendo. At that point, the Japanese cartridge will insert, and if you remove the ridges all the way down to the base, and you do a good job at it, you will be able to insert the cartridge all the way in. Now, I've done a couple of these, and it works fine. The one caveat that you have to be aware of is when the ridges are removed, the cartridge can then be twisted around and inserted in backwards if you really try. It doesn't go in very easily this way, but you can put it in this way. So you need to be careful that if you make the modification that you warn the user that the cartridge can be inserted backwards, and it will turn on. Actually, it will be inserted, but the power, you won't be able to get it to turn on, but it can be inserted. Okay? Now, one thing, again, since this groove has to mesh with this lever, if you don't file these ridges down all the way, and the cartridge isn't inserted all the way, then this groove will not line up properly with this lever, and you won't be able to get it to turn on. So sometimes you have to do a little fine-tuning so that this will be able to insert all the way, and you can turn this on. The best way that I've found to remove those ridges, if the end user so desires, is to use a standard soldering gun. And to go ahead and burn them out from the top. The problem is, if you're not real careful, you can actually bump the top of the cover and mar it. It'll melt a little away and it doesn't look real nice. So what you have to do is you have to remove the top, pull the top off, and then take the dust cover off, and then you can go ahead and modify the ridges. Make sure that you either have the power on or the power off, and that coincides with this being on and off. Okay, so what I usually do is turn this off, and then make sure this is pushed down all the way, and then you're able to get that back together. Make sure the power works, and that's really about the only thing that you gotta be careful of. Okay, now before we leave the NES control deck, what I would like to do is show you how to properly clean the control deck and the games that are associated with it. With your packet, you should have got a sample of one of our clean sticks. We have two sizes actually. You have the small size, which is good for cleaning game cartridges. We have the large size, which is good for cleaning consoles. The larger and the longer stick were designed to reach inside the NES, but it can also be used, because of the broader width of the cloth, can also be used to cleaning the Super Nintendo. These are called Irata clean sticks. It's a very high-tech item that we use for polishing the connectors. This is the cloth that is actually used in polishing silicon wafers in approximately 95% of the chip manufacturers throughout the world. In Japan, in Germany, and in the US, all of the large chip manufacturers use this very cloth to do the polishing of the silicon wafers that go into manufacture of the IC chips. So it's a very high-tech item. Don't let it deceive you, because it's mounted on a popsicle stick. This method allows us to get the product to you very inexpensively, and it also allows you to get a very good finish on the product at a very low cost. The next thing you'll need is some alcohol, and the higher the percentage the better. This is a Thrifty brand, 91%. You can get 99% alcohol, that's even better. 91% is better than 70%, obviously. For this demonstration purposes, I have the 90%. Basically what you do is you just take the smaller stick, dip it, immerse it all the way in the alcohol. Then you take the game cartridge and you simply run it along the upper edges of the connectors in this fashion. Flip it over and run it on the bottom edge. Okay? And then allow the alcohol to evaporate. Now you can use the same clean stick, if you choose, to clean the console with. Now when you open up the console, you'll notice down inside the connector has two sides to it. It has a small side here and a small side over here, and then it's got a number of connectors down the middle. What I recommend that you do is simply insert the corner of it, inside and run it sideways, and then you can do it on either side too. Simply insert it and then move it in and out on either side.